Hello, dear friends. Welcome to a review of Chapter 4 of the Second Treatise in A Course of Love. And this chapter is called The Call to Who You Are. So we're kind of extending the idea of a call. We start with talking about creation and how that affects us. So it tells us that creation is not static. The first time that I read this concept in A Course of Love, my jaw dropped. There was a kind of a recognition that nothing's ever going to stand still here. You never get to a place where I've arrived and now I'm done. In fact, it doesn't arrive and it's never finished. That's how creation is. That's the nature of creation. It just keeps expanding, keeps evolving, keeps changing, keeps morphing. That's how creation is, because it's an aspect of the all, which is the source, which is never ending. He tells us in verse 2, you are not only part of creation, meaning you were created, but as been said many times, you're a creator. And as such, a continuing act of creation. So you also continue to expand and to grow and to morph. This does not mean that creation is acted out upon you. So you're not a victim here, but that you are acted out upon creation. Now, take that concept. So you are acted out upon creation. There's movement going on here so that the you that you are is a piece of music that is ever evolving and moving. What this means is that you affect creation and are not at the mercy of fate. The only thing you're at the mercy of is your ego, and that's just till you let it go, which is inevitable. So congratulations on deciding to do that at this point. So you affect creation. That's why everything's a relationship. That's why everything giving and receiving are one, is because you're part of that dance. So he talks then how A Course in Miracles, its job, it dislodged the identity of who you think you are. And A Course of Love reveals to you who you truly are. So A Course in Miracles worked with the mind, the recognition that, ooh, what I thought was going on here is false. And A Course of Love takes you on a journey to discover what is going on here. The question is, are you still acting in the world as who you think you are, rather than as who you truly are? Because you can know that you're not who you thought you were, and still not incorporate your recognition of your true self into your daily life. So that's part of what we're all working on here. And I hear this theme from so many sources, from so many people that are doing this work. Like, how do I live this? How come if I know this, I'm still acting like this, or these thoughts are still happening? So this is the place where we are in this process. It's important to recognize that, and we get to make decisions now. We're at a place where we know who we are. We can start making choices about how we're going to behave and what we're going to turn our attention toward in a moment-to-moment basis. Now, this treatise is trying to show you how to live as who you truly are. That's the purpose of this second treatise. It's a new way of movement. Like learning to swim is a different way to move in the water. And this chapter does a great job of really making that analogy, making it real. When you're in the water and you resist, you've got problems. Or if you try to walk underwater, it's not going to work very well. So when you're in the water, it's learning a new way to move. And he compares that to how we are learning how to move from our true identity. Verse 5, if acting in the world as who you truly are is like swimming, Bumping into who you think you are could be likened to trying to move in the water as you would on land. Why? When moving freely through the water, would you suddenly try to move as if on land? Why would you do that to yourself? The explanation could be as simple as forgetting where you are, or as complex as a sudden panic or fear brought on by any number of factors. Either way, the result would always be the same: a sudden change from ease of movement to struggle, from going with the flow to resistance. And of course, those are our hallmarks that we use to identify when we have slipped back into acting as who we thought we were. Because as soon as we do that, it's not going to flow. That's how we know we're not doing it. Just like a swimmer, when you catch yourself struggling, let the struggle go and move with the flow. Verse 6, it requires, and here's what's being asked of you: remembrance, trust, and a wholehearted approach that allows the body, mind, and heart to act in unison. So let's break that down a little bit. So what this requires first is remembrance. Now you can set kind of an alarm clock, a memory valve within your own brain that says, okay, remind me when I'm in this place where I'm struggling and I'm resisting, remind me what that's a hallmark of, please. So you can set that alarm internally, like, oh yeah, I remember. This is what's happening. I'm identifying with who I thought I was. I'm identifying with my false self. That's why I'm struggling. It also requires trust. Boy, I have discovered working with people who are involved in this class that trust is such a huge factor in this process. You have to trust that whatever is happening to you in this moment is exactly what you need. It is exactly right for you at this time. When you are able to move to that concept of trust, like, yep, this is what I need right now, I accept it in this moment, then it makes the whole thing a lot easier. Pardon me. And the same thing is required, of course, when you're in the water. You have to trust that the nature of the water is going to be consistent. It's going to hold you up. It's going to help propel you. It's going to sustain you. Once you go with the water and with the flow, it's going to be benevolent towards you. And it requires a wholehearted approach. So that means that the heart's going to lead the way. So we drop from the brain down to the heart. Doesn't mean we don't use the capacity of the mind, but it means that we are letting the heart guide the way. And that allows the body, form, the mind, thoughts, and the heart to act in unison. So what this is all about is about your reaction to what occurs in your life. And that's really all we're doing here. We have this screen upon which things are happening. People are talking. Things are happening internally and externally. And we are the essence of awareness of whatever is happening. And when we think we are what is happening, or we identify with being at the mercy of what is happening, we're back in the old way of looking at it. So our job, and what we've always been doing, whether we're aware of it or not, is just to respond to whatever's on our screen in every moment, and to trust that whatever it is absolutely what we need at this time. So now we're going back to the idea of calling, because the reason why he takes us back to this right now is because it's important for us to integrate this into our sense of self in order to kind of come full circle into how we walk in the world as our true selves. So focus with me for a moment on the idea of your own calling. So when in the last chapter or at any other time in your life you're confronted with the concept of you having a particular calling, you've likely reacted with, one, an idea of something being given, like, ooh, I've been given this treasure, this calling, this passion for something. And two, an idea of something being asked of you, an obligation or a responsibility, like, oh boy, now that I'm being asked to lead this class, I'm responsible for making it go right. And so what happens there is you become freaked out a little bit, like, ooh, I better make sure I do it right. But a wholehearted response recognizes that giving and receiving are the same thing. So number one and number two are two sides of the same coin. And that when we give, we receive. So we don't have to panic or worry. And when we receive the calling, it's also a gift to us. So it's both. So he says there are two steps in this. Step one, recognize the dual nature of your thoughts and feelings. You've got both things going on. We're in a dualistic world. That's what happens. Step two, be willing to move past the acceptance of ambiguity to unity. Now, this is something else. Because when you move to the fact that, yeah, I have both things going on, I'm both excited by the idea that I might have a job to do that's meaningful, and I'm overwhelmed by the idea that I'm not capable of doing this job, that it's too big a responsibility, I might screw it up. So accepting both of those things is accepting ambiguity. He's asking us to move past that to unity, where we recognize that by giving and receiving, whatever we do, the choice we make in every moment is absolutely perfect. So in order to do this work, you need to inquire about your own ideas about a calling is another thing you need to do. So what this looks like is, okay, I have an idea about a calling. I might think that only really capable people get a calling. I might think that the calling might interfere with my social obligations or my relationships. I might think that I'm not smart enough to have a calling. I might have all kinds of different thoughts about a calling. So he says, look at your own thoughts. Really do some self-inquiry. What are my ideas that are existing about having a calling? And recognize that they're old ideas. Then he tells us to listen from within the peace of true acceptance to what you feel called to do. Now, what does this mean? Let's look at the peace of true acceptance. So if I'm feeling, for instance, at the point that I felt led to teach this work, I had certainly that experience like, oh, this is such a treasure. I love this work. I love this book. I love these concepts. And this is a responsibility. I don't know if I can make this work. So then by being willing to do that, I moved into a place of, oh, look, I'm receiving more than I'm giving. It's incredible what's happening here. How this reciprocal nature of this process is feeding me at the same time I'm feeding others. And who are others anyway? They're just me. So when I come to the peace of true acceptance about what I feel called to do, that's where I'm going to find the reassurance about my particular calling, that there's a peace about it. This is not about looking for fulfillment. So this is not about, gee, I'm not really fulfilled in my life. If I were to become a life coach, I might be really fulfilled by that, and I'd make money, and I want to make money. That's not that. But about living in accord with who you truly are. This is about finding your authentic self and going within to find what you resonate to. Verse 13. Being who you are is what you are called to do. Now, that's no matter who you are. You have to be in the space where you're willing, you want the truth, no matter what it is. If the truth is that you are a person who's going to sit in a room and meditate for the rest of your life, if that's what you're called to do, then that's what you need to do. If that's who you are, that's what you need to do. If you need to just live your life where there are no external changes, but the changes are all internal, then that's what you are called to do, by affecting directly the people who are in your life that you encounter day by day. I'll continue with that verse now. You are here asked to live a life as seamless as that of the birds of the air. You are asked to live a life where there is no division between who you are and what you do. This place of no division is the place of unity. So this is the opposite of wearing separate hats. This moment I'm a mommy, this moment I'm a worker, this moment I'm a child, this moment I'm a sister, this moment I'm a wife. It's the opposite of that. You are who you are, and what you do is in harmony with who you are. This isn't about accepting where you are in life, but accepting who you are, including yourself as an aspect of creation. Like you, creation isn't static, but it's always changing, growing, and evolving. So we need to come to a place of acceptance about that and recognize that you're never going to get there. You're just always going to be expanding and embracing what is, and there's so many surprises and adventures along the way. And when we stop resisting the surprises and the adventures, we can have a really good time with this. So verse 15 says, what this means is that you are still in a state of unlearning, of undoing old patterns of thought. This is atonement, and it is continuous and ongoing until it's no longer needed. Don't you love it? Anything continuous and ongoing is part of creation. Thus, the very act of undoing old patterns is an act of creation. So if you have this idea that, oh, here I am, I'm not there yet, I haven't arrived yet, I haven't perfected this yet, I have more work to do, you're not getting it. What's actually happening is that your undoing is creation. It is a part of it. It is exactly what you need to be doing. So when you're swimming in the water and you bump up against something and you find yourself, ooh, I'm struggling again, don't say, oh man, I missed it again. I got it wrong again. It's just the opposite. Like, oh, look, I get to see something that requires surrender, that needs to be undone, which means you're at that part of your own creation, your own creative process. It's a time to rejoice and let go. You are in the process of unmaking the old structure so that the new structure may rise. This process too is union. So I would really remind you to honor yourself, honor what you're doing here, honor your process. Don't judge it. Verse 18, the call is to be who you are. And this is happening at lightning speed that cannot be measured because of its simultaneous nature. So what this is telling is, think of all of the millions of threads that are in your brain, thought threads, conditioning threads, everything that's ever happened to you since you were a child that has created the structure of your thoughts. These are being undone. And it tells us at lightning speed if you think you're going slowly. And what happens, because it's simultaneous, is as soon as it's undone, it's replaced with a new thought that's real, that's true. So there's a lot happening in you at every time. In fact, there are many sages who say, when you think there's a lot happening, you think you're growing, you're not. And when you don't think you are, you are. I don't know if I abide by that, but I love the fact that it It flips the whole thing so that we become not the judge of our process, but fully engage in it, whatever it is. As your thinking rises to a new level, this act of creation will become an ability. Each new response is your heart's answer to the call to be who you really are. So what he's referring to here, a couple chapters back, he showed us how, if you have the thought of becoming a dancer, and then the thought develops into the ability of dancing, which then develops into part of your identity. That's what he's talking about. So you have the thought of undoing things that aren't serving, which now becomes part of your ability to undo those thoughts, recognize them, surrender them, undo them. And now it's become an ability, and then it moves into becoming actually part of the fabric of your identity. And each new response is your heart's answer. Verse 19 then, as we end this chapter, your heart hears only one call, one voice, the language of one source, that of unity. So if you are ever in question as to what's the source of this impulse, where does this desire to talk to this person come from, or this desire to do this come from, it's important to practice shifting from your head down to your heart and see what your heart's response is to it. It is amazing to me when dealing with other people how I'll think, well, how should I respond to this? And I'll think with my head, and then I'll drop down to my heart and say, what does the heart say about this? And they are completely different responses. So I encourage you to practice that, because that's what you can listen to. That's what you can trust and rely on, because that's your guiding light. So good luck to you, my wonderful friends, on your journey. You are going the right way. You're doing the right thing. You're on the right path. And best of luck and love to you in your undoing and your creation.